All right, let's talk about something that can be just so confusing and honestly draining. We're going to unpack what it's like to navigate relationships with people who are, well, emotionally immature. We'll get into what that really is, why it happens, and the impact it has on you.
So, to get right to the heart of it, let me just ask you this. Have you ever been around someone who looks like a grown-up, but the reaction to something feels like it's coming from a little kid? It's such a jarring experience, right? And that's exactly the core of what we're talking about today.
Okay, so the main idea to get your head around is this. An emotionally immature person often has the emotional capacity of a small child. It sounds simple, but it's a really powerful way to start making sense of their behavior.
So what do we actually mean by emotional immaturity? It's really this big gap between how old someone is on their driver's license and their ability to actually handle their feelings and take responsibility. And here's a super important point. This has absolutely nothing to do with how smart they are or what they look like.
Now, this gap becomes glaringly obvious when things get stressful. So how does an emotionally immature person act when they're challenged or when they just don't get what they want? This is when those childlike patterns really burst onto the scene. And here they are, the classic reactions. I mean, do any of these sound familiar? Anger that is just way, way out of proportion. The sulking, the constant blame shifting where it's never their fault. Oh, and the dreaded silent treatment, getting super defensive, or even trying to get back at you. These aren't how adults solve conflict. This stuff is straight out of a childhood playbook.
And this gets to a huge disconnect between what you intend and how they perceive it. For instance, you might offer some constructive criticism, trying to be helpful. But what they hear isn't feedback. To them, it feels like a full-blown personal attack on who they are.
This pattern just keeps going, especially with boundaries. You might try to set a healthy boundary, something that's totally essential for any relationship. But to them, it doesn't feel like a respectful limit, it feels like total and complete rejection.
It can even boil down to a single, tiny word. You just say no. Now, for a mature person, hearing no might be a bummer, maybe it starts a conversation, but for the emotionally immature person, it can feel like a declaration of war. It can actually feel like a good reason to get revenge.
So the big question is why? Why these intense, almost childlike reactions? Well, the behavior is just what we see on the surface. To really understand it, we have to look at the internal turmoil that's driving everything from behind the scenes. At the very heart of it all is a massive struggle with difficult emotions. Feelings like shame or guilt or insecurity are just incredibly hard for them to handle. It's like they never developed the emotional tools to just sit with those feelings, process them, and move on.
So what happens with all those feelings they can't process? They get projected onto someone else. It's a defense mechanism, and it kind of works in 3 steps. First, they feel that really uncomfortable thing, like shame. Second, they can't deal with it inside, so they have to get rid of it. And third, they unconsciously just push it onto you. You basically become the container for their bad feelings.
And here's what that actually looks like. If they feel inadequate, they will find a way to make it your fault. If they feel exposed or vulnerable, you suddenly become the enemy who made them feel that way. It's a complete transfer of all emotional responsibility.
So let's zoom out. How does all of this come together in the bigger picture? What does it actually feel like to be in a relationship, a partnership, a friendship, with a family member who operates this way?
The relationship just becomes fundamentally one-sided. There's often this bottomless pit of a need for your approval and praise, but a really limited ability to give that same support back to you. Their empathy is often conditional. It's there, but only as long as it doesn't conflict with their own needs. And with a real lack of self-awareness, they just consistently avoid taking real responsibility for anything.
All of this creates a very specific feeling, and this quote just captures it perfectly. You start to feel like you're the only adult in the room. You're the one who always has to be mature, stay calm, and be responsible for everybody's emotions.
And carrying that feeling around, wow, that is an enormous weight. This is the ultimate burden you carry when you're in a partnership that's so one-sided.
At the end of the day, it's just plain exhausting. You can't build a stable, loving connection when all your energy is being spent just managing the other person's reactions. Your focus completely shifts from building understanding to just doing damage control.
So, as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with one final, powerful question to think about. In your own key relationships, take a quiet moment and ask yourself this. Are you spending your time managing reactions, or are you actually building a partnership? The answer might tell you everything you need to know.